Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Soffer, and welcome to Light After Loss. This is a monthly series on 1-800-Flowers Facebook page and beyond, and I have been delighted and honored to host it for the last couple of years. I run Modern Loss, which is a global community and mission, publications, resources, etc., focused on bringing people together in conversation, in community, in cahoots, in inspiration across the long arc of loss, whatever that loss may be for you. What I've learned in life is if it feels like grief to you, it's grief. And so we tried to provide an ongoing platform for people to feel seen, feel acknowledged, and share what they've learned with others to help them, through this muck of the mess of loss. And I've just been really, really delighted over the years to work with 1-800-Flowers on this series and different campaigns. They are a company that really understands that, when a bouquet of flowers comes to your door or a really cute furry animal, stuffed animal, a live animal, that would be odd to just send somebody that. But a cute stuffed animal or whatnot, or box of chocolate, beautiful pears, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're arriving in celebration of something. Sometimes it means that they're arriving in support of something, in acknowledgement of something difficult that you are faced with going through. And I really appreciate that about this company. They are humans who get it, and they're awesome. And so I feel really lucky to be doing this with them. We have many episodes available on the Facebook page. I encourage you to check them out. Each month I speak with a different expert or thought leader in the field of loss, grief, and expanded fields of resilience, well-being, et cetera. And we have a huge roster of amazing knowledge that comes from people much smarter than myself. Today, I'm particularly excited because I'm speaking with someone whose work I admire very deeply. And she's working on a campaign that's, I think, will pertain to many of us in the United States. Many of us are still working. Many of us are living the realities of life, which are very tough and very non-binary. And most of us who are moving through loss are highly aware of our grief nearly every day, right? We don't need like a national day to remind us that we're living with loss. But National Grief Awareness Day is August 30th. And yes, that may sound weird to those of you out there who are saying, I'm literally aware that my mom died, every second of the day. I am aware of this too. But this day was officially designated in 2014 as a way to encourage open communication on loss and bereavement and to better inform the public on the real facts of grief. And that is something I can get behind because I think that the topics of grief and loss, you might agree with me, are things that we still, kind of want to run for the hills we want to run toward the hills when somebody mentions the words death, the words grieving, bereavement. They make us very uncomfortable. So I'm all for a day that designates educating the general public about what it really feels like to move through this. So with that in mind, this month I'm thrilled to shine a light on Option B, which is a program out of the Sandberg, Goldberg, Bernthal Family Foundation that helps people navigate loss and hardship and support their loved ones. And if the name Sandberg sounds familiar to anybody watching this on Facebook, that's because Option B was inspired by the former that's Facebook's COO and Lean In co-founder, Sheryl Sandberg, whose husband, Dave, died suddenly in 2015. Today, I'm speaking with Becca Bernstein. She's Option B's senior manager, and we're going to talk about something our work culture in honor of National Grief Awareness Day, and its environs. We're going to talk about something our work culture could do a lot better at, which is to provide a meaningful period of bereavement and compassionate leave for employees. At this time, more than 60% of workplaces in the United States only offer 3 days or less of leave after a major loss. Just like if you're watching this for a second, you probably, if you've had a loss and you had been working during that time, did you get 3 days? Did you get anything? Could you have used more time? Could you have used more flexibility? 3 days is not a lot of time when it comes to dealing with the harsh aftermath of a loss, not just the logistics, but the emotions, the realities that come with it. And so Option B just launched a campaign to help both employees and HR leaders better understand those real facts of grief and ways in which employers can provide support that matters. So, Becca, thank you so much for making some time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And obviously, Rebecca, I've read the Modern Loss Handbook many times, and we are co-conspirators in this work. And I think this day, even though grievers live grief day in and day out, I think National Grief Awareness Day is such an important day for people who haven't had to deal with grief to understand, what does this look like in the workplace? What are people struggling with behind closed doors? What might my colleagues be dealing with, my friends be dealing with, my managers be dealing with, and how can we create a better world? So
Yep. Agreed. We're on the same page. So, like, I'm ready, Becca. Let's get into it. But before we do, for anybody who's watching this on Facebook at any time, please feel free, drop something in the comments section. Feel free to share your own experiences with grief in the workplace, whether you were someone's manager, someone's colleague, whether you were grieving yourself. What was your experience with grief in the workplace and the support you received? Share that with us, or just add any questions that we can answer later. We will be checking that frequently after this conversation. So, Becca, I just talked about the average length of bereavement leave in the US. 3 days. 3 days, okay? What are some other policies for loss and tough life events that we should seriously consider updating besides that 3 day period of time?
yeah. And so first I want to acknowledge that all of these came from our community members. And
Mhm.
then looked at the research and said, interesting. The experiences of our community members map onto the research of grief and the business case for leave, like almost exactly. And
Mhm.
so I think, one of the biggest things that we are wanting to advocate for as part of this campaign is for people to be able to take leave non-consecutively or non-linearly. So right now, I mean, especially if you have 2 days or 3 days or one day, the non-consecutivity, however you want to say it, isn't even much of an issue. But we want to make sure that leave actually reflects the process of grief. And we hear from people all the time, okay, I went to the funeral, but especially if you lost a partner, a sibling, a best friend, someone who really, really matters to you, it's not just going to be over after the funeral. You're going to need more time to deal with both the logistical and the emotional aspects of loss. And so right now, most policies, we don't have the exact data on this, but we know anecdotally, most policies do not allow people to take leave intermittently or non-consecutively. And it's something that a lot of people aren't talking about. I think when we talk about number of days, that sounds familiar to people. And that is obviously something that we want to be talking about. But when we start talking about grief being nonlinear, how can our policies reflect that? That is often new information for people. So that is something that we're going out and talking about. Another thing is, 1 in 4 companies in the US are providing bereavement leave now for pregnancy loss and miscarriage. And Rebecca, as you said, loss comes in many, many forms. And that's something that we think should be covered by more workplaces. And so we're wanting to raise awareness around that, and also really raise awareness of the impact of that experience. I think even people themselves will sometimes think, oh, I had a miscarriage and I should really be back to work in a day, or I can go back to work tomorrow. But then they feel how that actually feels in their bodies, and it doesn't feel right. And so we want to raise awareness around that being a form of loss that we want expanded leave for.
When
And
my mom, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead,
I,
Rebecca.
I
Yeah.
was just, it was just occurring to me when my mom died, I was working. I was 30 years old. I was working not only full time, but I was working in daily television where there's, like, you don't put in for a day off when you're in daily television. You're told when you can take your time off. And my mom was killed in a car accident when I was 30. I was supposed to be back at work the following morning. She died at about midnight. I was supposed to be back at work at 8 a.m. the next morning. And I remember clearly it was completely up to my manager and the higher ups of the staff to just arbitrarily decide what type of leave, what type of leeway I should get because there was no bereavement leave policy. I was the guinea pig. We were quite a small staff and no one had ever gone through this before. It really depended on the kindness of the people that I worked for. And luckily, they were extremely kind. However, it did depend on me to figure out what I needed and ask for it. So, what's the problem, in your opinion, with putting employees and even managers in a situation where everybody is just doing guesswork?
Yeah, I think that's a really great way of putting it. And when we first started to see that this was really an issue that we wanted to go out and talk about around Grief Awareness Day, we did talk about there's a lot of information that still needs to be out there about how to support a colleague, about how to, if you're a manager, how do you support your employees through loss? That information is important. And we just heard over and over again, I had the most amazing boss. I had the best supervisor. I had these incredible colleagues, and it just wasn't enough. Because if the policy wasn't in place, the manager had to point back to, the policy and say, I'm sorry, like, of course I want to, or I understand, but the policy says XYZ. And I think that's why we felt really strongly about talking a little bit more about structural change. Obviously, that's something that Cheryl also talked about many years ago, and she paved the way and changed things at Facebook and Meta. But we realized that we needed to be talking about change that was more structural to help people and to be a complement to some of that other information that's out there about how to be a supportive colleague or a manager.
Yeah, I mean, good intentions are amazing, and kindness and empathy goes miles and miles and miles when you are somebody who is like just reeling with a loss, right? But like you said, if your manager or even your manager's manager is going just based on kindness and wanting to help, and they don't have anything to go on, like guidebook wise, everybody is scrambling. Everybody is trying to make it up as they go along for every single situation. So I too am a fan of encouraging companies to figure out structures to put in place, at least as a starting point, right? Because everybody's situation is different. Every loss is different. Like you said, like, I mean, a miscarriage might be different experience for somebody than say, somebody whose husband is killed in a car accident. There might be different needs, different timelines, but just having like at least a place to start from is so helpful. Everyone really wins, in my opinion. Like, as you know, I've done a lot of advocacy work for bereavement leave policies in the United States, and I think everyone really wins when ample time is given to move through the harder parts of loss. But also, there's actually a real cost to outdated or non-existent leave policies on the employer side. So let's just say, maybe there are some employers out there watching this. What are some of the negative impacts? What's the business case here for doing this?
Yeah. So, I think there could be a lot more research in this area, but, the number that you frequently see is that the cost of lost productivity, of absenteeism. We had one community member who put it, I was just a body at a desk. I wasn't getting my work done. I was just a body at a desk. And so the cost of just having bodies at desks who aren't able to show up and do work and be their best selves ends up being about $75 billion a year to US workplaces. And so
A lot of money.
it's a lot of money. There is
Yeah.
a root cost there. And the expansion is actually relatively low in comparison to that number because people request leave after loss relatively infrequently. And so I think, part of this conversation is sort of being able to quell the fear that this is going to cost a ton of money and your entire workforce at the same time is going to be dealing with this and they're not going to be able to come to work. It's making sure that, kind of like what you said, Rebecca, on a case by case basis, people have what they need so they can come back and be their best selves. And the other thing that we see is that
Or
this,
at least the best selves that they can be at
you're right.
each
Yeah.
particular time in their like, their path through this mess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, the stories of people who have felt supported by their employer, they're more likely to stay. You're more likely to retain your employees. They're more likely to be loyal to you because I will tell you what, no one ever forgets the way that a workplace showed up for them after.
Never,
That is one of those things
never.
that you don't forget. I can tell you exactly where I was when I got the call that my mom was in hospice. I can tell you exactly the conversation I had
Mm.
with my manager. I can tell you exactly the policy that I needed and how I used it. And I think that that's true of most people who have been through a significant loss. People will not forget. It is something you can be working with someone for 10 years. It will be the thing that they remember.
It really will. I mean, I have a friend who is actually she works in finance on Wall Street, which is, a generally male-oriented industry, at least in her
Yeah.
bank. And she had a quite a late term miscarriage. She had twins, and one of them died. And she was terrified to go back to her office. She was the only woman on her team in a bond trading group of people. Can you tell I'm a writer? In a bond trading group of people. And she was terrified to go back. And she got back the first day after a few months, and her manager, it turns out, who also is a man, had emailed the entire team saying, "Look, she's coming back tomorrow. This is what I want you to do. Like, I don't want you asking, how are you? I don't want you looking at her strangely. I don't want you being quiet as soon as she enters the room. I want you to say, it's great to see you. I want her to be comfortable. We don't want to make her feel uncomfortable. We want to make her feel comfortable." And the manager, she arrived, there was a letter from her manager saying, "I know, like, I don't know exactly what it is you need because I have never been in this situation, but I want you to know that I want to hear what it is. So, like, when you figure this out, like, please keep coming to me." And she never forgot it. She ended up staying at that job, I remember, for like 10 years because she was so loyal. I don't even think she liked the job very much, but she was so moved and gratified and felt safe and secure. And when you can, like, spend so much less energy on trying to feel secure and seen at work in your hard thing, like, you're freeing up a lot of energy to do other things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that I would add is young people, like so many things in our world, young people are really taking the charge on this. And there's some recent data that says that almost 80% of people between 18 and 34 years old would consider leaving their job if they didn't get proper support after.
Wow.
And I think it's becoming, it's becoming an expectation. And that's part of why we also want to equip workplaces with, employee expectations are changing and not unfairly. And so, how can workplaces and HR leaders take that information and sort of rise to the occasion in one of the hardest things that can happen in a human life?
So, two questions. The first is, first, tell me a little bit about Option B's new campaign in general. And then also, I'd really like to know, what are you recommending that companies on that side consider offering to employees?
Yeah. So I think the campaign in general, we want people who have experienced loss and hardship, who are employees, to feel comfortable sharing their stories and advocating for leave. So one of the things that I feel the most excited about is we're going to have an email template on our website that's already written for you, so you don't have to do any of the work, and you can click on it and you can send it to your workplace leaders, and that connects them to sort of the latest and greatest, best in class research, education, information about this issue. So that way we're really kind of doing the work for you, but you can be the one who's sending, because we do believe that this is a workplace by workplace issue. And I believe in the power of individual people to create change. And so that's really, the campaign for individuals, for employees and individuals who have been through loss and hardship, is really to empower them to be able to advocate and stand up and ask for more. And then in terms of companies, we're coming out with our sort of 5 key recommendations that range from number of days to grief being nonlinear, which I shared a little bit about earlier, to including pregnancy loss and miscarriage, to something called paid compassionate leave that not a lot of people know about.
Tell me about
Um,
that.
Paid compassionate leave is basically a catch-all for emergency losses and hardships. And so we get less into like the nitty-gritty of like this many days and this time, and recognize loss as a reality of life. And there are some things that aren't going to be able to fit into policies. And the other reason we really wanted to include compassionate leave is we obviously have so many people in our community who are struggling with anticipatory grief or something before a loss. And we started looking at stuff around bereavement policy, and we're like, yes, and also we have to account for the time before a loss occurs. And that's something that paid compassionate leave can cover as well. And so there are some companies who are already using this. In the United Kingdom, compassionate leave is actually a law. And so we just want to raise awareness. This is something that is possible, alongside some really great key recommendations for how to expand bereavement leave specifically.
And on the employee side, obviously you've got, some pre-written email templates that people can send to HR and their workplace leaders. You've got, education on workplace leave so that you can start conversations with employees and HR departments, with your colleagues. Because I think a lot of people sometimes you know what you need, but you don't know how to ask for it, or you're really nervous. So at option B, what would you encourage somebody who works at a company who is so eager to self-advocate and advocate for their colleagues, to do if they're nervous to take the first step?
Yeah, I mean, I think I hate to go back to it, but I do think that that's what the email template is for, because especially if you are still somewhere struggling with loss or hardship, like we wanted to kind of do the work for you, of like, you don't have to, you're not going to have the brain space to think about exactly how to language something, or oh, what is the best case to make to an HR leader, or to just a workplace leader. Again, smaller organizations might not even have an HR department, in which case we're encouraging people to just send it to a workplace leader that you trust, so that they can really sort of step up and create change. But I think that email template is the first step to having the language for you. It links out to the resource on the HR side so that people can read it and get more familiar with it. And it also doesn't put a ton of pressure on the person to sort of out themselves or, deeply share their story in the email. It's just the facts and the information. And then I think what goes along with that, we're doing a social campaign as part of this. And of course, if you're watching, we hope that you'll be a part of this, where we are encouraging people to be able to share their stories, because we recognize that is a need too, for people to be able to explain why leave has been important to them, to share photographs of the people that they have loved and lost, or of themselves struggling with grief in the workplace. So we're providing a space for the personal storytelling too. But I think the email template is the real starting place of, here we're giving you the tool to ask for more, to advocate for more, and to put this in the hands of leaders who can drive change.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Look, when you're grieving, or when you're dealing with a sensitive issue that is maybe triggering some older grief in you and makes you nervous, the last thing that you want to have to do is come up with your own creative script. It's so helpful to be handed a script that then you can maybe tweak a little bit. Yeah. It's like the reason that I send people gift certificates for like Uber Eats or Grubhub when somebody dies, not to be impersonal, but because I want them to remember they have to eat, but I don't want them to have to think about it too much, think about what they're going to prepare, how they're going to get it to them. So I love the template idea. I love the entire campaign. We're wrapping up with this. I could talk to you about this whole campaign forever. We will be linking to both sets of guidelines and recommendations in a written piece along with this conversation. And Becca Bernstein from Option B, thank you so much for your work, for this wonderful campaign that you're doing, and to help every person who is living with or supporting somebody who's moving through grief. And dare I say, it's probably most of us at this point.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And if people have further questions, they're welcome to go to www.optionb.org/bereavement@work. Obviously, follow us on our social channels, and we hope that you'll be involved in whatever way feels best to you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much again, Becca Bernstein from Option B. on their new wonderful campaign to expand bereavement leave and compassionate care in the workplace. And thank you so much to everybody who's watched this. My name is Rebecca Soffer from Modern Loss. Again, this is Light After Loss with 1-800-Flowers. I'm so pleased to be here and encourage you to check out all of our previous episodes on this very page. And also feel free to drop your comments and questions at any time here. Thank you so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful end to your summer, whatever it is you may be doing, and please take good care.